everyone! So, to best prepare for the new reading modules of the digital SAT, I've found that it's really important to understand every single type of question that you're going to see, so that you don't get surprised with anything on test day. Understanding the format of the test is really the most important step in easing your anxiety, and by knowing the certain telltale signs to easily be able to recognize certain questions, you're better equipped to look for what you need to look for while you're reading, which will reduce the time it takes you to answer each question. Before we get into it, I just want to shout out Prep Scholar. They've got an online course on the digital SAT that's really helpful. Their online course helped me to score 1600 on my SAT back in 2020. They really know their stuff. And if the biggest roadblock to you right now in studying for the digital SAT is that you don't have enough practice, they are the test prep company that I most highly recommend because they mirror the questions of the SAT almost perfectly. Check out my link in the description below to get $50 off their ACT or SAT prep course. And with that, let's get into it. So I recommend scanning the intro and the actual question that they're asking you for about 3 seconds and trying to identify what type of question this is. So then you can read the text that they give you with a specific goal in mind. So what are these question types? Let's go through them in the approximate order that they appear in each reading module, and I'll also let you know about what frequency they appear so you know what to focus your time studying on. So first we've got the fill-in-the-blank vocab type questions. These are right at the beginning of each module, and you'll see between 4 and 8 of these in each module, so they are a very common type of question. These questions are kind of a combination of the old vocab questions and the old concision and tone questions on the non-digital SAT. Instead of just plugging the answers into the blank and seeing what sounds best, you need to be able to pull evidence from the text to support your answer choice. The good news is this does mean that they're less reliant on you knowing what every single vocab word means that they give you. As long as you solidly know what 3 of the 4 choices are, you still should be okay and be able to select the correct answer. So the key to mastering these is to find a synonym for the blank that they give you in the text, or a phrase that means the same thing as what the blank is trying to convey. There will usually be more than one clues like these to help you with exactly which word you're trying to replicate with the blank. So by having to point directly to synonyms or phrases in the text for what we want in the blank, while also keeping in mind the overall text and what its message is, we can avoid falling into trap answer choices that we might fall for if we just go on vibes only. So next you'll see some kind of main purpose, overall structure, or main idea question. All of these pretty much mean the same thing. This question type is also fairly common, and you'll see quite a few of these mixed in throughout each module. When it says overall structure, you usually have to pay attention to the order that things are happening in, as well as the main purpose. While main purpose and main idea is just the main purpose and main idea. Remember again that you need direct textual evidence to support your choice, even if it's a main purpose question. So in this question, you should be able to point to the claim about Mitchell made in the text, if you select this option, and the exact example that supports that claim, which in this case we can do. Since the questions now are much shorter than full passages, it makes this strategy more straightforward than ever before, even with the trickier questions like the main purpose questions. So the next question type is what I like to call comprehension questions. The comprehension questions really aren't all that common, but you might see a few in each module. These will ask you something like, what does the text say about this thing? Why did this happen? For these, I recommend reading the blurb and the question that they give you, reading the answer choices after that, and then reading the text to try to locate evidence for one of those answer choices. This helps because you know what you're looking for first, instead of reading with no goal in mind. These questions are also where the finding textual evidence strategy really comes in handy. If you think that you might jump to conclusions too easily if you read the answer choices first, then you can totally read the text first and then the answer choices. If you do that, I'd recommend answering the question in your head, pointing to a specific part of the text that backs up that answer, and then looking at the choices to see what matches what you've come up with. So you can approach these in a few different ways, and how you approach them depends on personal preference. It really just comes down to what's fastest for you and what's helping you get the most right answers you can get. So the next question type is also one of the more common ones. So this question is, what best supports the hypothesis or the claim? These questions and the comprehension questions are very much like the old SAT's daily double questions, I used to call them, or the 2-part questions. But in this case, you're given the second part right off the bat. This question type comes in a few different styles. Most likely you'll see this question type coupled with a table, a graph, or just statements as each of the answer choices. The way to answer these is to first figure out what that hypothesis or claim is. Usually this will be pretty obvious and it's given right to you, but you still want to make sure you know exactly what it is. So mentally circle those lines, highlight them with the digital tools. Your next step is to find evidence from the table or graph that directly supports that claim or hypothesis. Not just what you think the overall purpose of the text is, not something that supports something else in the text. You need to be supporting that sentence or that clump of sentences. Again, this really is just the repetitive advice of not inferring anything, but it really is the most important trick to the reading modules of the SAT, so I'm just gonna keep bringing it up. It's also important to have table reading abilities and graph reading abilities for these questions, which you can improve on with Khan Academy or just taking science, math, or like social science classes in your school. Anything where you're doing very basic analysis of data like this. So the next question type is a mini version of the debate passages that we had in the old SAT. These are pretty rare and you will probably only see one of them in one or both of your modules. You can easily tell when you have this question because it'll say text 1 and text 2, and they'll usually be asking you something along the lines of how would this author respond to what this author is claiming. I have a whole walkthrough on this style of questions from the old SAT that might still be relevant here if you're struggling with these, but they're honestly so rare that I probably wouldn't focus on them if you're struggling in other places. So to do these ones, before you start reading the two texts, read the question that they're asking about the texts and any background that they give you. This will give you the context of what you're trying to get out of reading them, based on what it's telling you to look out for. Like for example, in this one, we need a conclusion from text 1 and some sort of opinion or argument from these two people in text 2. This will help us sort through what's actually relevant from the two texts, which saves us a lot of time, because a lot of times these are scientific passages with quite a bit of jargon in them that's hard to get through. Another type of question you'll encounter is the which choice most logically completes the text question. There are usually a few of these on each module, and they work similarly to the comprehension questions, where they're looking to make sure you understand what's happening in the text, but they're a little trickier. These are the only questions where you sort of have to infer how the text would be finished, but you still have to back up that choice with evidence, so it's not truly inferring. You'll have to very carefully read the entire text for these ones, and I recommend summarizing what's happening in your own words. You'll be making up a scenario by choosing one of the answer choices, but that scenario needs to make sense and be related to the broader context of the text. Now, every once in a while, you might run into a question on the function of a certain part of the text, or some other wildcard question that we haven't talked about. These are very rare, they can take a few different forms, and probably won't show up on each module, if they show up at all. But in general, if you're given a question that you don't really know what to do with, make sure to read the question carefully to know what they're asking of you, and back up any conclusions you come to, and any answer choice you end up selecting, with both evidence from the text and the actual statement that they give you. If you do this, you should be set for every type of question they can throw at you. And even if you're not feeling too confident in it, remember it's just 1 or 2 questions on the entire reading modules of the SAT, so you'll be okay. Now, let's talk about the remainder of the questions on the test, which are more similar to the old SAT's writing section. First, we have these standard English questions. Whenever you see the word standard English in the blurb that they give you, you don't have to worry about reading the text super carefully, since all we'll have to do here is fix their grammar issues. We don't have to comprehend anything larger that's going on. The most common grammar topics that show up are things like sentence fragments or run-on sentences and how to prevent those with proper punctuation. They also might give you a subject and have you pick the correct verb that goes along with that form of the subject, so singular or plural. This one doesn't show up as much, but knowing this concept is really helpful for a lot of the harder questions. This is a positives, so these are the blurbs in between 2 sets of punctuation. So brushing up on those skills will be extremely helpful. There are other things that they'll ask you grammar-wise, but honestly being solid on those 3 topics will get you most of the way there. If you need a more in-depth refresher on grammar, check out my digital SAT reading section video or my old writing section video. Both of those have a pretty good grammar crash course. So the logical transition question is the other very prominent question near the end of the reading module. You basically just have to read the sentences or the parts of a sentence around the blank, figure out the relationship between those 2 parts, and then connect them with the correct transition word that establishes that relationship. I'd recommend reading those 2 parts and coming up with your own transition word in your head, and then reading the answer choices to see what matches. And knowing how all these transition words are used is a really good place to start. So the final type of question is a new kind of style type question. It's what accomplishes the student's goal, and it'll be phrased just like that. These questions are kind of a combination of the adding or deleting information question and the ordering the sentences correctly question from the old SAT writing. These are pretty common. You will see these on every SAT reading module, and they're probably one of the more challenging question types. My main advice for these is to look carefully what the question is having you do with these bullet points of information. You get this through the student goal statement. You need to select the answer choice that best aligns with what the student goal is saying, what the student is actually trying to do. Not just the one that best combines all the bullet points or fits with the information overall, because all of them are going to fit with the information that they give. A key is to support your answer choice with evidence from the actual student goal statement, not just the bullets, since all the answer choices will be referencing those bullets accurately. So if every piece of the student goal statement is covered with your answer choice, and you confirm with the notes really quick that it actually makes sense, then that's perfect. So that's just about every question type you'll encounter on the reading modules of the digital SAT. Remember, there may occasionally be a random question that doesn't fit into these categories, but knowing that these are by far the most common categories of questions that they'll give you, and having a slightly different but really solid strategy for each one, hopefully reassures you and helps you do better on test day. Remember, while you're taking your test, you want to be able to identify these questions and what type they are almost instantly, which isn't that challenging since they usually use identical phrasing for each question type. After you know this, you can tailor your approach to the specific question style. For example, for comprehension and claim questions, it might be easier for you to read the answer choices first before you read the text, while for something like main purpose questions or transition words, you'll probably want to read the text first, summarize what you think the answer is in your own words, and then take a look at the answer choices. These strategies all come down to what works best for you, so make sure you experiment with things before taking your real test. But knowing that each question type wants something slightly different from you can help you form your strategy. But remember, every single SAT reading module question relies on textual evidence. That means don't infer anything. You always need to be able to point to a specific word or specific phrase in the text or in the actual part of the question that they give you that backs up whatever answer choice you choose. The only questions that are exempt for this are maybe the grammar, the standard English questions. Alright, well that's it for now. Be sure to subscribe if this was helpful to you, and check out my link in the description below for $50 off Prep Scholar's SAT course. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon!